When I got into a car accident, my parente refused to come to the hospital to sign the surgery. Consent. Dad texted, "Can't this wait? We're busy." So, I called my Uncle Jeremy instead. 3 weeks later, I walked into their office with papers. "My name is Madison. Last month I was hit by a truck." I was lying in the emergency room and the doctors found internal bleeding. They said I needed surgery right now. But there was a complication and they needed family consent. I texted my parents. 5 minutes went by. Finally, a message came back from my father. "We are in a critical investor meeting. This project is our future. Can't this wait? We will handle this tomorrow." Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. The pain in my side was sharp. A fire spreading through my ribs, but it was nothing compared to the cold, hollow feeling that text message left behind. "Can't this wait?" I stared at the words, and something in me finally snapped. Not with a scream, but with a quiet, terrifying click. I thought, there was one person left. My fingers were shaking, but I scrolled past Mom and Dad to a name I hadn't called in months. Uncle Jeremy. He was my mother's estranged brother. The family black sheep, the one they had written off years ago because he'd refused to join the family business. He was a carpenter, a man who worked with his hands, and in my family's eyes that made him a failure. To me, he was the only one who ever sent birthday cards with $5 in them. He answered on the second ring, his voice rough. "Maddie, what's wrong?" "I'm in the hospital," I whispered. "I've been in an accident. They need to do surgery and they won't come." The line was silent for a beat, just one. Then his voice changed. It became steel. "I'm 50 minutes out," he said. "Don't you let them touch you. Don't sign anything. I'm coming. Just hold on." He didn't make it in 50 minutes. He made it in 39. The emergency room doors burst open, and there he was still in his work flannel, sawdust on his jeans, his face pale. He wasn't looking at me with pity. He was looking with a pure protective rage that I hadn't seen since my grandfather was alive. He found the surgeon. He listened for 60 seconds, his jaw tight. "What do you need? Where do I sign?" He signed the consent forms on a clipboard, his signature a sharp, angry slash. Then he turned to the head nurse, a kind woman named Grace, who had been watching me with worried eyes. "I'm Jeremy," he said, his voice low and firm. "I'm her uncle. I am the only family member she has. From this moment on, you call me for everything. My sister Jennifer and her husband Richard, they are not to be allowed in this room. They are to receive no information. We clear?" Nurse Grace just looked from his blazing eyes to the glowing phone on my tray, which still showed my father's text. She nodded once. "Perfectly clear, sir." Just like that, he took control. The power shifted. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, he walked beside me, his hand on my gurney. "You rest, Maddie," he said. "I'll be here when you get out. I'm not going anywhere." And I believed him. I woke up to the steady beep of a monitor and the smell of antiseptic. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I saw him. Uncle Jeremy was asleep in the hard plastic visitor's chair, his head tilted back at an awkward angle, his flannel shirt rumpled. He'd kept his promise. He was here. My parents. Not a single call. Not one text. You have to understand, my family was Denver royalty. At least that's how they saw themselves. Richard and Jennifer. My parents were real estate developers, and their faces were plastered on for sale signs all over the city. They didn't just sell luxury. They were luxury. But their real child wasn't me. It was their business. Specifically, their newest, most ambitious, and as I later learned, their most disastrous project, a gleaming luxury tower downtown that was failing badly. My entire life had been lived in the shadow of that tower. I was an afterthought, a supporting character in their story. When I graduated from my architecture program magna cum laude, they were supposed to be in the front row. They showed up 2 hours late, just as people were filing out, smelling like expensive wine. "Sorry, darling," my mother said, kissing the air near my cheek. We were trapped in a critical zoning meeting. You understand. I understood. The meeting was more important. When I got my first promotion at the firm, I was so proud. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for that. I called them, my voice shaking with excitement. "That's great, Madison," my father said, his voice distant. Listen, I've got a contractor on the other line who's trying to overcharge me on drywall. I have to handle this, he hung up. I'd stood there in my tiny apartment holding a phone that had gone silent, feeling that familiar cold ache. Why did I even call? Why did I still, after 26 years, seek approval from people who had never once given it freely? It's a strange thing, this invisible chain you wrap around yourself. It's a prison without bars. When you grow up starved for approval, you learn to live on scraps. You learn to accept indifference as just how they are. You keep coming back, hoping this time, this achievement, this will be the one that finally makes them see you. It's not weakness, it's a survival mechanism. You learn to be quiet, to be compliant, to make yourself small because you're terrified that if you make too much noise, they won't just ignore you. They'll stop pretending to love you at all. So I kept calling, I kept trying. While Uncle Jeremy, the family failure, was the only one who ever remembered my birthday. A handwritten card every single year, without fail. I recovered at Uncle Jeremy's house. It was quiet, nestled in the foothills outside Denver, a world away from the noise and ambition of my parents' life. Jeremy was a terrible cook, but he made me toast and soup. He changed my bandages without flinching. He sat on the porch and read old paperbacks while I slept in the guest room. He treated me with a simple, uncomplicated kindness that felt foreign. My parents finally showed up a week later. They didn't call first. They just appeared pulling up in my father's gleaming new Land Rover. My mother, Jennifer, walked in carrying an oversized designer handbag. My father, Richard, was already on his phone. "Madison," my mother said, kissing the air. "You look better." We were so worried. I just looked at her, worried enough to wait a week, worried enough to leave me bleeding in an ER. "We don't have long," my father said, ending his call. "We've got a site inspection. But we brought something for you to sign." He placed a thick stack of documents on the coffee table. No apologies. No, how are you feeling, just business. "What is this?" I asked, my voice weak. "It's just some refinancing paperwork for the project," he said dismissively. "A formality. As a family member, we need your signature on a few things. It just shows the bank we're all on board." I hesitated, looking at the dense legal text. I was an architect, not a lawyer. I was still foggy from the painkillers. "Right now?" I asked. "I'm still." "Madison, please," my mother cut in, her voice edged with impatience. "We're trying to keep this project alive. It's the family's future. The least you can do is sign a few papers. We're doing this for you." That old familiar guilt. I was being difficult. I was the problem. I looked at the stack. It was at least 30 pages. Where I asked. My father took out an expensive-looking pen and flipped through, placing X stickers on 5 different signature lines. Here, 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 here. And here. I took the pen. My hand was still weak from the accident. I signed where he pointed. My signature was shaky, barely legible. The change in the room was instant. The tension vanished. My father's shoulders relaxed. My mother suddenly smiled, a bright, artificial flash of teeth. "There," she said, gathering the papers. "That wasn't so hard, was it?" My father was already walking to the door. "Good. We'll let you get back to your rest, Madison. Try to recover quickly. We need you back on your feet." They were gone less than 10 minutes after they arrived. As the sound of their Land Rover faded, I sat there, a sick feeling settling in my stomach. They hadn't just seemed relieved. They had seemed victorious. My friend Sydney stopped by 2 days later. She's my chosen family in Denver, a paralegal at a downtown firm who I'd met at a truly terrible yoga class. She walked in with a bag of takeout and a bottle of wine. "Okay," she said, kicking off her shoes. "I'm here to save you from your uncle's cooking. No offense to Jeremy, but a man cannot live on toast alone." I laughed, a real laugh. It felt good. We ate on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. It was normal. It was safe. "So, what's the latest?" she asked, topping off my wine. "Parents still being..." "Well, them." "Oh, they actually visited," I said, trying to sound casual. "Showed up yesterday, in and out in 10 minutes. Wow. Record time. Did they at least bring you something better than drugstore chocolates?" They brought a 30-page stack of refinancing documents for their project. Had me sign them right there. Sydney paused her wine glass halfway to her lips. They? What? Yeah, just some formality. Something about needing family signatures to show the bank they were all in. Sydney put her glass down. Her whole demeanor shifted. The easygoing friend disappeared, and the paralegal took over. Madison, she said slowly, what exactly did you sign? I don't know. Just refinancing stuff. My father pointed. I signed. I was on painkillers, Sid. I didn't really read it. Where are the copies? What copies? They didn't leave you copies, her voice was sharp. No. Should they have? Sydney stood up. Get your parents on the phone. Right now. Tell them you need copies of every single page you signed. Tell them. Tell them your new lawyer needs to review them as part of your accident claim. Tell them anything. But get those papers. Her panic was so sudden it terrified me. I called my mother. It was the first time I'd initiated a call since the accident. She picked up, sounding annoyed. Madison, is something wrong? I need copies of the papers I signed yesterday, I said, trying to match Sydney's firm tone. My lawyer for the accident settlement needs to review all my recent financial signatures. A lawyer? Why, that's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with this. Mom, just send them, please. She sighed, a long-suffering sound. Fine. I'll have our assistant scan them. You're making this so complicated. An hour later, an email landed in my inbox. Here I said, handing my laptop to Sydney. She sat at Jeremy's kitchen table and started to read. I watched her face. For the first few minutes, she just scrolled, frowning. Then she stopped. She read a paragraph, then read it again. Her face went completely white. Sid, what is it? What's wrong? She looked up at me and her eyes were filled with a horror I had never seen before. Madison, she whispered, her voice shaking. This isn't refinancing paperwork. What are you talking about? She turned the laptop toward me and pointed to a block of text. This is a durable power of attorney. A POA. I don't. What does that mean? It means, she said, her voice rising, that you didn't just sign a formality. You just gave them complete, total legal control over everything. Your bank accounts. Your medical decisions. She stopped, her eyes widening as she connected the dots. Oh my God, she whispered. Madison, your accident. The insurance settlement. You just gave them the legal right to intercept and control every penny of it. I couldn't breathe. What? What does that mean? Settlement. They can't just take it, can they? They can try, Sydney said, her face grim. With this, they can open accounts in your name. They can negotiate with the insurance company as you. They can accept a settlement, deposit the check, and transfer the money. By the time you found out, it would be gone. Uncle Jeremy had been standing in the doorway, drawn by our voices. What's going on? Sydney explained. They tricked her, Jeremy. They had her sign a durable power of attorney. Jeremy's face, which had been so full of protective anger, just crumpled. Richard. Jennifer. Even them. I never thought. It gets worse, Sydney said. She was still staring at the document. The signature is shaky, the one from the hospital, but the document itself looks clean, almost like it was prepared in advance. She looked at me, her eyes sharp. Madison, think. Have you signed anything else for them in the last year? Anything at all? I searched my mind, pushing past the fog of medication. I don't know. Maybe back in the winter. Maybe 6 months ago. Dad had me sign some. Routine tax paperwork for the business. He said it was just a formality for his accountants. I didn't even read it. I was just so happy he'd ask for my help on something. Sydney closed her eyes. Oh, Madison. Do you have a copy of it? It might be in my email. He had me e-sign it. I pulled my laptop over. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I logged into my email, searched my father's name, and found it. Routine tax filing. Signature required. Dated 6 months ago. I opened the attachment. It was the same document, page for page. A durable power of attorney. My signature at the bottom was clean, strong, confident. They didn't prepare this for the hospital, Sydney whispered. They already had it. The hospital visit. That was just a charade. Maybe to get a fresh signature one that was dated after the accident just to be safe. They've been planning this. This revelation was so much worse. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was premeditated. Why? I whispered, looking at Jeremy. Why would they do this? The project, he said, his voice hollow. The tower. I've been hearing whispers for months that they were overleveraged, that they were desperate for capital. But to do this... Wait, Sydney said. You said you signed those papers at the hospital as part of the refinancing. But what if? She was typing, navigating back to my email. Do you have any shared cloud accounts with them for your architecture work, anything? We have a shared family drive, I said. They used to upload blueprints for me to look at back when I thought my opinion mattered. I haven't checked it in ages. Sydney's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm in. She scanned folders. Projected costs, investor decks, zoning permits. Then she stopped. There was a folder named Contingencies. Inside was a short thread of emails between my father and my mother, dated 3 months before my accident. The subject line was the Madison asset. I read the words as Sydney scrolled. Richard to Jennifer. The construction loan is due. We're not going to make it. We need a new source of capital, and we need it 3 months ago. Jennifer's reply, what about Madison's policy, the comprehensive one we set up when she started driving? It has a massive payout for accidental injury. It's a potential asset. My father's response, it's a long shot, but good thinking. Let's review the POA we had her sign in February. If something were to happen, it could be the miracle we need to save the project. I felt the room tilt. I wasn't their daughter. I was a contingency plan. I was an asset. They had looked at my life and calculated its value in dollars, all to save their precious building. I finally understood. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what the money represented. This is what happens when people build their entire identity on what they have, not who they are. My parents' project wasn't just a building. It was their whole world. Their status, their reputation, their friends. Their entire sense of self was tied up in being the Wilsons, the successful developers. Without that project, they weren't just poor, they were nothing. And to save themselves from being nothing, they were willing to sacrifice their own daughter. I went back to my own apartment the next day. Uncle Jeremy drove me. I walked in, and it felt small. Different. My old life didn't fit anymore. For the next 3 weeks, I focused on 2 things, my recovery and my plan. I did every physical therapy exercise until my muscles burned. I learned to walk without the cane. I went to therapy and talked about the anger. I let it sharpen me. Sydney and Uncle Jeremy handled everything else. Jeremy found a lawyer, Gregory, a colleague of his from an old union dispute who owed him a favor and hated developers like my parents. Gregory was perfect. He was quiet, meticulous, and absolutely ruthless. He drafted the lawsuit. He filed the revocation of the power of attorney. He gathered the affidavits from Nurse Grace and the hospital staff. He subpoenaed the phone records from the night of the accident. We had the emails. We had the false POA. We had the phone records. We had the timeline. We had them. The confrontation was scheduled for a Tuesday. I chose the date. It was the same day as my parents' monthly investor progress meeting for their failing tower. The same meeting they had used as an excuse. When I walked into the lobby of their downtown office, I felt a strange sense of calm. The security guard who had seen me come and go for years didn't even look up. I was with Jeremy and Gregory. We didn't bother checking in. We took the elevator to the penthouse suite where the conference room overlooked the entire city. We could hear my father's voice through the glass doors, loud and confident, probably spinning some new lie to his investors. Gregory pushed the door open. We didn't knock. The room went silent. My father was at the head of the table commanding a map of the project displayed on the screen behind him. My mother was beside him, smiling, taking notes. 6 investors, all men in expensive suits, looked up in confusion. My father's face went through 3 rapid stages. Confusion, annoyance, then pure rage. Madison, what is the meaning of this? He boomed. We are in a critical meeting. You cannot just barge in here. I know, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. That's what you told me when I was in the emergency room. I figured it was time I finally attended. Gregory stepped forward and placed a thick, blue-backed legal document in front of my father. Then one in front of my mother. Richard and Jennifer Gregory, said his voice polite. You are being served. One of the investors looked bewildered. Served Frank. Richard, what is this? This is nothing, my father said, his face turning a dark, blotchy red. He shoved the papers aside. It's a private family matter. Madison, you're being hysterical. You need to leave. Now. It stopped being a private matter, Gregory said, the moment you committed fraud. He turned to the investors who were now watching frozen. Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Gregory. I represent Madison. I just thought you should know who you're in business with. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson here, he said, gesturing to my parents. Used a fraudulently obtained power of attorney, tricking their daughter into signing it months ago to attempt to seize her $500,000 accident insurance. Settlement. All to prop up this failing project. You could have heard a pin drop. The investors just stared, their faces unreadable. You, my father screamed, pointing at me. This is family business. You're being dramatic. Madison, please, my mother cried out, finally finding her voice. Her eyes were wide with panic. Our reputation, think of what this will do to us. We will be ruined, after everything we've given you. I looked at her. The woman who had left me to bleed. The woman who had valued a building over her own child. My reputation, I asked. Your reputation ended the second you saw my accident as a business opportunity. It ended when you chose this building over your daughter. It ended when you sent that text. One of the investors, an older man with gray hair, slowly closed the leather portfolio in front of him. He stood up. Richard, he said, his voice flat. If even half of what this lawyer says is true, I think we're done here. He turned and walked out of the room. Another investor gathered his things. And then another. They didn't speak. They just left one by one. A silent funeral procession for my parents' future. My parents didn't even try to stop them. They just sat there frozen, watching their project, their reputation, and their entire world crumble. They were ruined. And they had done it all to themselves. Faced with the lawsuit, the irrefutable email evidence, and the public humiliation of their investors walking out, my parents didn't fight. They settled. They lost the high-rise. The project they had sacrificed everything for, including their daughter, went into foreclosure. Their reputation in the Denver real estate world was shattered. The insurance settlement, the $500,000 they had tried to steal, finally came to me. I used it to start over entirely on my own terms. I left the large corporate firm and opened my own small architectural studio, one specializing in the sustainable green design I had always been passionate about. And I took a significant portion of that money and established a college fund for Uncle Jeremy's children. He was my real family. He was the one who showed up. This was my seed planting a new future from the ashes of their greed. If you have ever felt like you were on the outside of your own family, like you were the one on the edge, please listen to me. Your worth is not determined by their inability to see it. You do not have to spend your life shrinking yourself to fit into a space that was never meant to hold you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is build your own family, a chosen family based on respect and love that is given without conditions. The people who truly show up for you, those are your people. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, or if you know someone who feels invisible, please share this. You never know who needs to hear that they are not alone.